You see, you're supposed to say to me, you represent everything I hate.
Well, that's not true.
I'm supposed to say to you, you represent everything I don't understand. But so far, I understand everything you've said, and so far, you say you trust me.
I don't put down a whole group of people because of some of them, you know.
Well, in addition to the age I represent a bourgeois family man. I represent an institution like the New York Philharmonic, which I am the head of. I represent establishment, if you wish. In a way, I hate that word, and I don't like to think of myself that way, but that's something that you would naturally rebel against.
Yes.
But I don't find you rebelling against me. I would like
what would you want me to do?
I want you to hit me. I want you to tell me.
This is David Oppenheim for CBS News. What this broadcast is about is the gap, the aching gap between the two generations. We of the Middle Ages trying to understand, the young ones trying to explain. Tonight, these young ones are pop musicians on tour, singing their own songs, and just explaining.
The kids today aren't just going to accept what's laid down for them by the older generation.
We want to have the adults around. We just don't want them to constantly tell us what to do.
Pop singers get through to millions of people, and I really mean millions.
What kind of people? You don't get through to adults.
They get through to the kids that are going to become adults.
A lot of the kids that are walking around the street with long hair, a lot of the kids that you see from time to time and retch over are going to be running your government for you.
Music is the key to all this, and so the first part of this broadcast is a look at the songs themselves, both the notes and the words. For this phase, here's Leonard Bernstein.
For a long time now, I've been fascinated by this strange and compelling scene called pop music. I say strange because it's unlike any scene I can think of in the history of all music. It's completely of, by, and for the kids. And by kids, I mean anyone from 8 years old to 25. They write the songs, they sing them, own them, record them. They also buy the records, create the market. They set the fashions in the music, in dress, in dance, in hairstyle, lingo, social attitudes. And I say compelling because it shows no sign of abatement. The fads change, the groups change, but the songs keep coming, increasingly odd, defiant, and free. This music raises lots of questions, but right now, for openers, here are the two that concern me most. One, why do adults resent it so? And two, why do I like it?
CBS News presents In Color, Inside Pop, The Rock Revolution. Brought to you by
General Telephone and Electronics, GTE and its family of companies.
I came to these songs naturally through my children, but I have a sneaky feeling I would have heard and responded to them anyway. After all, they are part of music, which is my world, and a part that is so pervasive as to be almost inescapable. Many parents do try to escape this music, and even forbid it on the grounds that it is noisy, unintelligible, or morally corruptive. I have neither escaped nor forbidden it, neither as a musician nor as a father. I think this music has something terribly important to tell us adults, and we would be wise not to behave like ostriches about it. Besides, as I said, I like it. Of course, what I like is maybe 5% of the whole output, which pours over this country like the two oceans from both coasts, and it's mostly trash. But that good 5% is so exciting and vital, and, may I say, significant, that it claims the attention of every thinking person. Okay, let's get down to some specific songs, to the music itself. Here is a cheery bit by the Beatles.
Good day, sunshine.
Now, that's not just cheery, it's also very unorthodox. For one thing, it suddenly, if you noticed, leaves out a beat, so that an ordinary 4-beat measure becomes a 3-beat measure. Listen. Good day, sunshine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good day, sunshine. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so on. You see just one sudden bar of 3 among all those 4s. We never used to find that in pop music. It's new. And then just as suddenly, there was that arbitrary change of key. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Sort of tart, pungent. Then there was that odd little canon at the end, a sort of round. Good day, sunshine, sunshine. What a way to fade out in a new key, a shifting meter, a sudden new counterpoint. But that's the Beatles, always unpredictable and a bit more inventive than most. You know a remarkable song of theirs called She Said, She Said? Well, in that song, which goes nicely along in 4, there's again a sneaky switch to 3/4 time, only this time it's not just for 1 bar, but for a whole passage. She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. Did you get it? If not, listen again to the Beatles this time.
She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. Everything was right. I said.
And we're back again safely in the old 4-beat. Now, the point I want to make is that such oddities as this are not just tricks or show-off devices. In terms of pop music's basic English, so to speak, they are real inventions. And it's not only the Beatles who make these inventions. For instance, there's a group known as the Left Bank that has a tune called Pretty Ballerina. Now, this tune is built not in the usual major or minor scale, but in a combination of the Lydian and Mixolydian modes. Imagine that. Comes out with a sort of Turkish or Greek sound. I had a date with a pretty ballerina, her hair so brilliant that it hurt my eyes. Rather unusual, wouldn't you say? And even so commonplace a number as the Monkees' recent hit, I'm a Believer, has one noteworthy musical twist. It's going along in the standard gospel shouting tradition. Then I saw her face, now I'm a believer. And now suddenly here's the cadence. I'm a believer, I couldn't leave her if I tried. What a place to end on. Totally unexpected chord. Now I know you may say, well, what's so great about that chord? It's ordinary. We've had much more sophisticated and adventurous harmonies in pop music of the 30s. What about Gershwin? What about Duke Ellington, Sophisticated Lady, with those rich chromatic parallel 7th chords? Yes, but that's the whole point. This pop generation has rejected that old chromatic sound as too sophisticated. The sound of an older, slicker generation. The old-fashioned sound of the cocktail lounge. This new music is much more primitive in its harmonic language, relies more on the simple triads. The basic harmony of folk music. Never forget that this music employs a highly limited musical vocabulary, limited harmonically, rhythmically, and melodically. But within that restricted language, all these new adventures are simply extraordinary. Only think of the sheer originality of a Beatles tune, like this one, which, again, uses only the elementary resources of pop music. I was alone, I took a ride, I didn't know what I would find there. Well, that could almost be by Schumann. It's so expansive and romantic. And notice how the range of the melody has been expanded. Most pop tunes have in the past been restricted to the range of an octave or so, owing to the limitations of pop singers' vocal ranges. But not so anymore. Our pop generation reaches and spreads itself, grasping at the unattainable. And this is one of the things I like most about it. The straining tenderness of those high, untrained young voices.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me in the jingle time.
That's Bob Dylan. And here's a group called The Association.
And along comes Mary,
And, as always, The Beatles.
she loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you.
Of course, whereas I may call that a straining after falsetto dreams of glory, you may call it nothing but a breakdown in gender, that same androgynous phenomenon of the pop scene that produces boys with long hair and ruffled shirts. And you may be right, but back to the music. What else do I like about it? I like the eclecticism of it, its freedom to absorb any and all musical styles and elements, like old blues.
My baby does the hanky-panky.
Or a high Bach trumpet. That's Penny Lane, Beatles. Or a harpsichord. Or even a string quartet. Curious. Then I like the international and interracial way it ranges over the world, borrowing from the ragas of Hindu music, or borrowing from the sensuality of Arab cafe music. Then I like some of the new sounds, purely as sound, that are coming out of pop music. The arresting impact of a consort of amplified guitars.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The sound.
Well, she was just.
And then I like the astonishing force of those hiked up bass lines. And the outrageously cool utterances of that inhuman electric organ. Now, don't get me wrong. I said I liked some of those sounds. There's a good deal I don't like and wouldn't dream of defending. I don't like volume for its own sake, or the way the words are often drowned out by drums and amplifiers. I don't like the amateur quality of some of the writing and the out-of-tune singing. This music can be coarse, faddish, a victim of its own sameness. And yet when it's good, it's irresistible. After all, there are pros and cons to everything, especially in a popular art. And the cons are well enough publicized. We're here to examine the pros. And we're in luck because I've managed to find one song that incorporates so many of these pros that we can enjoy them all at once. It's a marvelous song called Society's Child, written, astonishingly enough, by a 15-year-old girl named Janice Ian. This tune is very well known among the followers of pop music, but you may not have heard it since it's been withheld by most of the radio stations for reasons unknown to me, although probably having to do with its subject matter, which is, as you'll see, somewhat controversial. But apart from the words, Society's Child contains many of the musical joys we've talked about, and some we haven't, like fascinating sounds, both natural and electronic, like a strange use of harpsichord and that cool, nasty electric organ. There are astonishing key changes and even tempo changes, ambiguous cadences, unequal phrase lengths, the works. And we're even luckier to have Janice Ian herself here to sing it for us. Listen hard to Society's Child.
see you know that you look so fine. Now I could understand your tears and your shame. She called you boy instead of your name. When she wouldn't let you inside. When she turned and said, but honey, he's not our kind. She says, I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. Walk me down to school, baby. Everybody's acting deaf and blind until they turn and say, why don't you stick to your own kind? My teachers all laugh their smirking stares, cutting deep down in our affairs. Preachers of equality think they believe it, then why won't they just let us be? They say I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. One of these days I'm gonna stop my listening, gonna raise my head up high. One of these days I'm gonna raise my glistening wings and fly. But that day will have to wait for a while. Baby, I'm only society's child. When we're older, things may change. But for now, this is the way they must remain. I say I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. No, I don't want to see you anymore, baby.
It kills me, that sassy retort of the organ at the end, that voice, those words, and that key change. But for now, this is the way they must remain. They say I can't see you anymore, baby. Oh, Janice, how did you ever write such a thing at the age of 15? You're a great creature.
Thank you.
I think that's quite a remarkable job for a girl of your age, and I congratulate you on what I'm sure is going to be a brilliant career.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to see us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So it would seem that the kids of our pop generation have a lot to say. Actually, what Janice has written is a short social document, not a satire, not a protest, just a picture of a social trap. Of course, underneath it is the spirit of protest, which underlies so many of these pop songs. The implication is, and strongly, that this is not at all the way things ought to be. Just as the Beatles song, Paperback Writer, implies in its satirical way all the corruption of our lives. Their anti-hero, the paperback writer, has written a book he's trying to sell, and he sings, it's 1,000 words, give or take a few. I'll be writing more in a week or two. I can make it longer if you like the style. I can change it round, but I want to be a paperback writer. In other words, prostitution. I'll do anything to sell that book. Well, the implication is clear. In fact, the message in the lyrics of most of these songs is delivered by implication. This is one of our teenagers' strongest weapons. It amounts almost to a private language. But this use of implication produces another effect as well, something bordering on poetry. Many of the lyrics, in their oblique allusions and way-out metaphors, are beginning to sound like real poems. And protected by this armor of poetry, our young lyricists can say just about anything they care to. And they do care. They care about civil rights, about sexual freedom, about peace. They talk about alienation, mysticism, drugs. The lyrics of Bob Dylan alone would make a bombshell of a book of social criticism. Do you know those ominous lines of his? Something is happening and you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? And you know who Mr. Jones is, don't you? Us. And the lyric of Along Comes Mary, I have been informed by its author, 22-year-old Tandon Ulmer, is not about a girl named Mary at all, but about Mary Jane, which is a literal translation of marijuana. And a staggering piece of verse it is. And Paul Simon of Garfunkel fame says, among other things, I touch no one and no one touches me. I am a rock, I am an island. Formidable stuff, isn't it? But mostly they talk about love, as all songwriters have since time began. Only this time, it's either a cool kind of love, or a frankly sexual love, or, and this is most important, universal love, a mystic, oriental concept that is presumably attainable through meditation, or withdrawal from the establishment, or most readily through drugs. Now, what does all this mean? I think it's all part of a historic revolution, one that has been going on for 50 years. Only now these young people have gotten control of a mass medium, the phonograph record. And the music on the records, with its noise and its cool messages, may make us uneasy, but we must take it seriously as both a symptom and a generator of this revolution. We must listen to it and to its makers, this new breed of young people with long hair and fanciful clothing. And the rest of this program will be devoted to just that, getting to know them, seeing them in action, hearing their thoughts. And perhaps by learning about them, we can learn something about our own future.